one before? No, I think that was first.
So I've listened to that, and look, you're going to be asked, it seems to me, every question you can possibly imagine being
Right.
asked
Oh yeah.
before all
Right.
this is
Right.
done.
Right.
But my intention here is to try to ask some questions, to fill some holes. Let me
Okay,
close
good.
this just so that the
Yeah.
rest of the folks, so that I'm, in case anything was overlooked.
Sure.
And so, first off, are you ready, Alan? Or this is
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much going
Okay,
to
great.
jump right
Okay.
into it.
All right, great. One thing that I haven't heard so far, and I expect that you will be getting into this, would be the issue of minority employment
Right.
in city government.
Right.
My understanding is that it had improved somewhat in the current administration over the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you plan on doing to ensure that minority employment, first off, is it an important issue, and
Right.
B, what do you do about that to ensure that there's a good reflection of minorities in city government?
Right. Well, it is important because we should be reflective of the community,
Mhm.
and that's one of the reasons I'm for the residency requirement.
Okay.
And so, because if you go outside the city boundaries, that dilutes the minority population.
Okay.
Because within the city proper, it's I think it's close to 20%
Mhm.
minorities. What's interesting, I don't know if you know this, I used to be in community reinvestment for the bank.
And which
And
bank
that's-
was that again? I'm sorry.
That was First of America is when I was a CRA coordinator, and then it
Okay.
migrated to National City, which
Okay.
is now PNC.
And you were banking for what, a dozen or so years?
14
right?
years.
14 years.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
I'm sorry.
started in new accounts and did credit cards, oversaw the credit card department, then
Okay.
community reinvestment. But then I went over to Security Bank and their business deposit
Okay.
products. But with regards to community reinvestment, why that's important is I think it was like late 1970s.
Mhm.
Banks were accused of redlining around
Right.
poor areas of the
Mhm.
community. So they created a community reinvestment coordinator position
Mhm.
within the bank, and they sent me in to build that level of trust.
And that was you.
Right.
Okay.
And so I did it here in Springfield to low and moderate income areas. But one of the aspects was to look at loan applications, making sure that you're not discriminating against minority loan applicants,
Mhm.
and then also creating programs to help low and moderate income people and areas.
Okay.
And so that's what I did. And then also went over to Decatur and had to do it there.
Okay.
And what was interesting, in Decatur, it took me about a year to get acceptance because they saw me as an outsider from Springfield. But, it's just almost like you're going, what's going to happen here
Mhm.
with regards to build a level of trust with city government and the minority community. Going back to my days in banking, Springfield Urban League did a Achieving the Dream luncheon.
Mhm.
And basically it was a report on city government and their minority practices, hiring
Okay.
practices.
Mhm.
And my dad was mayor at the time, and
Okay.
the sponsoring bank was my bank.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of, I'm on the other side.
Yeah.
But that's what they critiqued, the minority workforce at that time. And really the numbers were probably as good as what they are today. And so you fast forward to today, and that's what's interesting about numbers. I know the mayor had said that, he's improved things, but in the eyes of some of the other minority candidates, they felt there wasn't anything being done or
Mhm.
not enough being done.
Mhm.
So that's what you have to take a look at. If someone perceives it a certain way,
Sure.
you need to make sure that it's not reality. You have to
Okay.
prove it wrong or change their perception.
Yeah.
So as mayor, that's what I would do,
Okay.
is work with the community like I've done all my life,
Mhm.
in the banking days.
Mhm.
Even as treasurer and as mayor, I'd continue those practices, best practices. And some of the things specifically I would put in place is have a review process for applicants. So if you're going to offer a job to a non-minority and there's a similar applicant that's a minority,
Mhm.
you should have that review process and make sure that something wasn't missed, making sure there's no discrimination
Mhm.
in place, and really you're just having another set of eyes or group of eyes look at it to make sure everything's balanced.
Would that review process be within the Human Resources Department or some other place in city?
It'd be that's what we'd take a look at. It depends on the numbers. You hopefully that you would probably have an outside. You'd have both. You'd have someone from HR and then someone from outside, someone from the department
Yeah.
that's doing the hiring as well.
Mhm.
So you'd the one thing is the concept would be in place, but you don't want to be so rigid that you can't make adjustments.
Okay.
Because the bottom line is we're trying to improve the diversity within city government.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing in the police and fire. You know, they have banding. Banding was supposed to resolve everything. And
It certainly hasn't.
No. And so to me, I'm thinking, well, you should just look at other municipalities or other fire departments and police departments from throughout the nation. And there's some better practices than what we're using. So let's find out what the better practices are. Or you should have figured out why isn't banding working? You know, the numbers aren't there. Why aren't we receiving the numbers? And that's constant analysis that you have to have going on. And that's what I would do is on a regular basis. You know, I always self-critique myself, but you have to do it with all your practices, just like you do here at the paper. You know, if you just wanted to continue on the same road, you know, you're going to diminish through time. And what we try to do is we want to continually raise the bar, raise the level, become better each and every day within city government. And that's what I would do as mayor, is put those best practices in place with regards to reviewing the practices, the recruitment processes, as well as the hiring processes to make sure that we're reaching our goals.
What's the minority employment now in the treasurer's office?
We have one out of the, let me think here real quick. I think I've hired 1, 2, 3. I believe there's 4 people I've hired, and one of them is a minority.
Okay, so the folks you've hired, that's the ones that you've had a say in.
Right.
And so you're at 25%, but that's not a large pool.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then, that's, it's a numbers thing. And that's the thing with numbers is the other aspect that we need to take a look at, and there's one vacancy there now in my office.
In all the years, in 12 years, you've only had 4 people you've had to hire?
Well, right now that's who's there. There's been a couple that do-overs. Well, they were in probationary period, and then it didn't work out.
Okay.
So I'm not going to, go into personnel, but there's 2 that fell into that realm, and so we just redid it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let
and
me
then,
ask,
so on the other side of it, as far as minorities, other practices I've put in place is internship and do it like a management trainee, because one aspect that we have minimal minorities are at the management level. And so, and that's what we take a look at is we would put in practice internship, or when I was in banking, we did management trainee.
Okay.
And so we'd put in something similar to that effect.
The one area of city government which strikes me where it's been really poor has been the fire department. I'm drawing that from when they hired 20 firefighters about 4 years ago now, was it just about? And I believe there were only 1 or 2 of those 20 that were hired that were minorities. With that in mind, and as you point out, banding hasn't produced the results that were hoped for. Is pass-fail a good idea to consider when it comes to testing for these positions?
That could be.
Okay.
I haven't really delved into different testing.
Okay.
What they used to have is they had it based, everybody wants a qualified firefighter or police officer or any job. You want the qualified applicant. So what we need to do is give them the tools to improve their ability. And one thing I did introduce was the school partnership, which I'll go over in detail later.
Okay.
But to answer your question, how they used to do it is they did it based on best score on down the road or down the line, and you would just hire the next available firefighter or interview them or police officer, and that's how it worked.
Okay.
Now with the banding, from my understanding, you can jump around within that band.
Sure.
And what's disheartening is they had someone in, I think it was band 3 or 4, and then it was a minority applicant. I believe it was with the police department, and then they weren't hired here, but they ended up going to I think it was Normal or Bloomington. And that was just recent. It was in the paper, and they ended up hiring them. So we should, if that happened here, we should be looking into that. What we should do is track all the minority applicants, and if any of them end up going elsewhere, we should find out, well, why were they hired elsewhere? Why didn't we hire them here? So that's another aspect of review that we should always be self-critiquing our processes.
Okay. Right. And
but we would take a look at, when I take office, that's what we take a look at is what's available to us, what's had the best success rate. Were those officers that were hired, were they quality individuals, or did they have a lot of fallout, or whatever the case may be?
how much, if at all, is the mayor's hands tied by Civil Service Commission? Because it's not, as I understand it, a matter of the mayor just being able to.
Right, you can't
hire
handpick.
you, and
Right,
you.
right.
So, I mean, how do you deal with the Civil Service Commission, because they play a role as well?
Well, it goes back to the general parameters. I mean, civil service has the same goals in mind, you would think. Apply the law, making sure you have quality individuals, but really they're just supposed to apply the law.
Okay.
I mean, so they shouldn't be picking and choosing individuals. Hopefully they're not doing that.
Okay.
But again, it goes to the philosophy of the mayor and the direction you want to take. And I think, Mayor Houston has, had a concerted effort to increase minority numbers. They're not where they should be, and it's not perceived as well or successful as the minority population would like it. So that's what we need to determine is how do we get to the goal that everybody, it's fair in everybody's mind.
Okay. You've already been asked at the previous forum by the realtors what the biggest mistake was that under the previous administration. Let me flip that on its head. What do you see as the biggest success under the Houston administration? What's the mayor done well?
Let's see, what's he done well? I think, let me think about that. You know how it is always, getting the positives. I'm not much for judging anybody with regards to that. But what he's done well, I think he's put forward his own initiatives, right or wrong. I think he's, he had a strong commitment in what he felt was right and pushing those initiatives through. And so I think that's what, as a mayor, you have to stick to your value system and your morals and your beliefs and try to carry that banner through and just not present an ordinance because you think it's going down in defeat. And there's some people that do that, but I think the mayor, he would always take something forward regardless of the outcome he thought, and he would, be sure to speak up in that regards.
Okay.
So as far as personally, that's what I look to, and a mayor as far as someone that would have a leadership role, and that's what he has done. But the other thing is the financial stability. That's something that's debatable, and so but that's something he's hung his hat on.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second because he did hang his hat on that and the average daily balance and whatnot. But in point of fact, the city wasn't bouncing any checks under the previous administration.
Right.
So
Well, here's the difference would be under my administration, we would give the accrued balance. Right now, everybody talks cash balance.
Yeah.
And so it's like your checkbook, your personal checkbook, and you write your checks and that, but you have a stack of bills still to be paid. Well, that's not part of your cash balance.
Sure.
That's your accrued balance.
Correct.
Because you have to have your car payment, you have to have your house payment, but you didn't write the check yet, so that's your cash balance. So your cash balance looks pretty good until you write that car payment, $300 and $700 for the house payment, and then there goes your cash balance. Okay. So I would present as accurate a picture as far as the accrued balance goes, and that would give the city council and the public good financial understanding of where things are. As far as the treasurer's office, we operate off how a bill gets paid is it goes through a department, say Public Works. They have a bill to pay. So what they do is they approve it and they send it to the Office of Budget Management, which reports to the mayor, and then they make sure the dollars are budgeted, and then they send it down to us, and then that authorizes us to issue the check. We make sure the funds are in the bank, and then we write the check, and that's the approval process. Okay. So that's one of the reasons I'm running for mayor is because the mayor has control over all the offices, all the budgets, except for the treasurer's office, the clerk's office, and the office of the council coordinator.
Okay, great. Let me ask you about city employment. The mayor takes credit for reducing headcount by, I believe, 156 at City Hall. What would you do as mayor to keep employment? I'm not sure the right. I'm searching for the right thing. But to keep employment from exploding, to keep the payroll from becoming bloated. What do you do?
Well, his is 155 because one of those was mine.
Okay. I stand corrected.
Oh, that's right. I'm just teasing you.
All right.
But actually, what you always have to analyze our efficiencies as far as that goes. And people tell me. They complain about snow removal. Well, that's a direct reflection of headcount, I'm sure. Same with police, coverage. You have reductions there. They're down quite a few. So what you'd have to determine is what's how can we best serve the public and be as efficient as possible with the resources that we have coming in. So first and foremost, under my administration, is balancing the budget, especially with CWLP. And that's why, I wasn't coming real strong with the mayor. I thought that they used the pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, to balance the corporate fund.
Okay.
And so I thought, you've sat in those meetings where Eric Hobby would get up there and he's talking about the electric fund being in a negative, but then the pilot was in above budget.
Sure.
And that didn't make sense. I mean, if you're in the red, you should have, kind of drawn a line in the sand saying, we're going to put this on hold or not take more than what was budgeted. And but in regards to the efficiencies, you always have to take a look at that. You have to be flexible as far as an organization and determine how you best serve your customers. That comes from my private sector experiences. You need to, that's what it's all about. As a government entity, we're here to serve the public as best as possible, just like you would in private industry. And that's what we have to do, is figure out how best can we deliver the services that are expected, plowing the streets, protection to the citizens of Springfield. And that's where, as far as within each department, when I come in, there'll be a transition period, of course, where I look at each department and determine the restructuring of them. One area with regards to public works would be, I would split out the neighborhood. I'd make a neighborhood division, which would address neighborhood needs, and then you have a developers division or a business division, which would work, or they would focus more on the business side of things as far as developers, projects, building projects, things of that nature. I mean, that gives you one example. So there would be some structural change, but you take each department and look at how best can we do the services or provide the services, deliver those services to the customers.
Okay. Let me make sure I understand, jumping back for a second to the pilot. If I'm hearing you correctly, and tell me if I'm not, what I'm hearing you say is that do as well as you can at CWLP, and if there's anything left over, then shift it over to the corporate fund. But if you're operating in the red, it doesn't make any sense to pay your pilot first and be broke. Is that, is that
Well,
a good
no,
understanding or not?
actually, the pilot is, I went to Springfield, Missouri and took a look at their, they have a similar power plant.
Okay.
And it's a municipal owned one. So the pilot is a standard practice within municipalities that have power plants.
Okay.
But what you would look at is, like this last year, we had, the pilot was, I can't remember the exact number, say it was, I'm just hypothetically, say it was $6 million.
Okay.
Well, they were above budget on the pilot, where it was like coming in like $2 million over.
Okay.
Well, they should have just projected what they would have needed instead of taking above the budgeted amount. They should have only, the corporate fund only needed the budgeted amount.
They only did the 6.
Right.
Okay.
And then, but they took the 8 or whatever the case may be. And really, you should.
Shocking, but-
Yeah, right. But if the corporate funds, say sales tax are doing well, say they're above budget in sales tax, that's where you'd say, well, we really don't need this. We should, forgive the pilot. Or here's where the accounting mechanism comes into play. You could have said, like they borrowed the waterfront. Remember, they did you could have just said, well, we're gonna withhold the pilot payment and not make that, but it'll be an accounting number that we can use later. If they feel that's something that we could address at that point in time. But the bottom line is, you don't want to have a technical default of CWLP. I mean, it's just it
That
hurts.
costs money in the long run, so
Right.
it's-
So you don't want to do that.
Okay.
And so that's what you'd have to have that flexibility to, and as a administrator, you have to have that foresight to adjust. And I think that's something that would take the leadership of the mayor. Say, here's how we're going to avoid that.
Okay. Let me talk to you a second about department heads and departments in city government. If you become the mayor, I mean, is anybody's job safe on the department heads? You're going to clean house. I mean, how do you approach that? I'd like you to specifically address the corporation council and the police department.
Well, on the overall, I want the election to be about the mayor and who best can take the city forward. So I didn't want it to be about this person or that director or that director. And so I want them to hear it from me first.
Okay.
And I will meet with each director, including the chiefs, the fire department, police department, corporation council, and talk to them one-on-one, and then go from there. But so there'll be, as far as I'll give you some insight as far as, is this going to be aired soon or no?
No, this is, well, hold
Okay.
on,
I don't-
our planning is on the 26th.
Okay.
That's for planning purposes, so
Okay.
it
For
wouldn't
instance,
hit
the
like-
police department.
Okay.
Okay. What I intend to do is have a panel that would do the interviews. I would be in, sit on the interviews because the police chief really can make a huge difference in, especially with what's going on in the world today.
Yep.
You have to make the right selection with regards to the police chief.
Mhm.
And so what I intend to do is you would have diversification or a diverse panel.
Mhm.
So as far as the numbers now, I mean, it could change, but probably 5 maybe, if that, as far as individuals that would ask questions of the individuals that would be interested in being chief, and that would include the current chief, of course, if he wants to apply for it.
Okay.
And then, but it would be a diverse group, and then we would, I would ask them to come up with probably 3 individuals that they would prioritize, and then I would make that decision based on those final 3.
Does that then, not to interrupt, does that then rule out any outside candidates? I mean, what if there's somebody from the Acme Police Department
Right.
down the road?
I would probably start internally first.
Okay.
And that's how I had done my office is, my office is split. We have union and non-union.
Mhm.
But usually you try to get hire within. And then if someone's qualified, great. If not, then I've done both. I've looked
Okay.
within and didn't have it, so we went outside. So,
Okay.
if there's nobody within, or maybe there's one person, if they don't light the world on fire, my regards, then I'd say, well, why don't we open it up, see what's there. But if we have the qualified candidate that I think would be a good direction for us to go,
Mhm.
and specifically will be with community policing.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about a program, I'm talking about a philosophy of moving the department forward in a community policing manner.
Okay.
That's what I would, if we have a fit internally, that's the direction I'd take. But if we don't, then we'll have to see at that point in time.
Just so I'm clear on this, then, for the police department, at least you have a panel that would help interview and evaluate candidates, and then you would get a recommendation from those and make the final call. Is that a good way of thinking about it? Okay.
Right.
All right.
But I'd have it where they have probably final 3,
Okay.
because really I need someone in there that I have a good feel for.
Okay.
And I don't want someone there that, that we wouldn't be able to, we don't agree on the direction things need to take. Now, I'm not going to sit there and micromanage them, but I want to be assured that they share the same philosophy as far as community policing that I do.
Okay.
Because I think that's the direction that the city needs to take, especially in light of Ferguson and other things going on. You need to have the chief of police has to be a leader in that regards.
Okay. You've also got a history, at least in Springfield, of problems with the police department catching up on the mayor. I mean, I don't
Right.
really have to tell you about that.
Yeah, it happened with my dad too.
How do you address that?
Right.
Are you concerned about that?
Yeah, that's always a concern, and that's where you have to have. It seems to me that sometimes there's factions within different departments, and that's what you want to. You want everybody working towards the same goal.
Okay.
They have to, with community policing to be successful, you have to have everybody believing in community policing, because it's a whole department effort.
Yeah.
And so they have to have the belief in the leader, of course, with the chief. So I think if you have that positive direction or the buy-in from everybody, from the the patrol person on up, then I think it'll do away with a lot of things that hopefully that happened in the past.
Okay, great. And with regard to the level of staffing in the police department, oftentimes I've seen cases where the staffing in the law enforcement agency goes down and folks are concerned, but on the flip side of that is sometimes those staffing levels were set during the 1990s or so when crime levels were significantly higher than they are today. Do you have a sense as to whether the staffing level of the police department now is about where it should be? Should it be more or should it be less?
That's something that we'd analyze.
Okay.
And so really it's probably the direction of the community policing philosophy.
Okay.
First, I'm not going to go in and make a commitment to hire 20 officers or cut. Right now, what we're going to do is hold our own.
Okay.
And then after, a set period of time, maybe the first year, analyze things where they're at, because that's your feeling around period, trying to get things done, moving in that direction, and then we can analyze where we're at
Okay.
and what we need to do. And then the bottom line, though, is cash is king. I mean, you have to have the money, otherwise, you're not going to be doing anything.
Okay.
But what we have to focus on, though, is technology. I mean, changing technologies. We need to give the police department the tools that they can be as efficient as possible. And that doesn't mean weaponry, but that means, the changing dynamics of technology stage, how we can best use our information to make them as efficient as possible. That's the direction we need to go.
Let's take Stingray. Are you familiar with the Stingray technology?
No, I haven't looked at that specifically.
You've heard of it though, correct? Okay. One of the things that police departments that get this technology have to do is you have to sign some sort of non-disclosure agreement with the federal government.
Right.
I mean, this may be a bit of a tangent, but since you brought up technology.
Right.
I mean, how do you balance that, particularly with regard to a technology that has the capability of for lack of a better word, snooping into people's cell phone records?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that we.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. No, I wasn't. What I was, the area I was looking at is more GPS.
Okay.
So for instance, what I hear is the police officers, they get bogged down in reporting. So let's try to make that electronic.
Okay.
So when they pull up somewhere, I don't know if there's GPS tracking available now. Eventually, an officer will be able to pull up, and the information where they're at, they'd have their own locator. Especially with the whatever the cam, video cam is, or whatever, there should be tracking. And so those are crime areas, so the data should automatically be feeding in. So you wouldn't even have to bother reporting stuff because they have your location. And so that's what I was referring to. Is how best we can, not have to write out information or input information, if it can be done automatically using GPS or something of that nature, or where they would just be able to, like using your phone, iPhone, where you could easily enter information quickly. That's the direction we need to go. So it maximizes their time, and they're not bogged down with the menial task of writing tickets or anything of that nature. The more you can do electronically, it'll free up their time for other items.
What about body cameras? How do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, I'm for the body cam. And I think when those first came out, I thought people thought, well, it's they thought it was to keep the police in track. I thought the other way. I think it protects both.
Yeah.
That's what I viewed. I thought that'd be great for the police. Because that way you get a semi. You don't get the full picture, but you get. I think you can get a large degree of what's going on using the body cam. And I think it's for everybody's protection. Same with the cars, having cameras on the cars. But it comes down to dollars, and that'd be a priority to have something. The technology, I think, is a priority. Educating and training the officers is a priority under my administration, because I want to move the direction of community policing, and that, I think, will be a different philosophy for a lot of the officers. And so, of course, what comes with that is education for
I want to make sure I understand community policing. As I understand it, it's getting away from the idea of a reactive person who just answers 911 calls.
It's all response driven now.
Okay, all right. And so you want to move away from that.
Be more preventative.
Okay.
All right. Being in the neighborhoods, they used to have just houses there. Well, ideally, I mean, this is the ultimate. You would have like a neighborhood house, but it would be equipped where they could take reports there or whatever. I mean, it'd be like a mini station there within the neighborhood. And so that way it maximizes your time. If they need a response with anything, say they had an issue with public works or something, they could just send an email or some communication where it's high priority, to address the issues.
Jumping back into the cameras for a second, most cars, my understanding, do not currently have the dashboard cameras. They're starting to come on board. Body cameras haven't really been introduced. Can you characterize for me how high of a priority it would be? Because dollars are limited, obviously. I mean, how much of a priority would it be to get these?
Well, I think there's going to be grant dollars available with what's going on in Ferguson. I think there's going to be grant dollars available from the federal government. And so we'd, of course, do all at all possible, we try to get grant dollars, but what we couldn't get, there's other ways to pay for it. There might be some donors within the private sector that might, or you just have to make that a priority to budget within, and that comes down to where's the revenues compared to what was projected. So they'll be after the, if it's not, I know some are in the budget this year, but those that aren't, then we'd have to take a look at next year's budget, and we'll try to make it a priority to have that happen though.
moving away from the police department for a second, let's talk about the corporation counsel's office. Right or wrong, I sometimes see that as the crossroads of city government because it takes into account a lot of stuff that's happened in a lot of departments. On the other hand, the salary for the corporation counselor is not particularly high as it compares to the private sector, and you've only got
Or
a
the
job.
attorneys.
Right, or the attorneys. So the pay is relatively low in terms of the legal profession. The top gentleman or woman has just a 4-year guarantee here in terms. So how challenging is it to find the right person for the job? Do you have somebody in mind, and how would you go about hiring for that?
That is an important position because that's someone that would work almost hand in hand with the mayor as far as that goes. So that's very important. And I have a somewhat of an idea, but I haven't, carved it out. I haven't carved it out yet. First and foremost, you got to win the election, right?
Sure,
So that's what the focus is. But there's I have from my private sector experience, I know several attorneys in that. But that's what you want someone that's knowledgeable of city government, and then also willing to dive into issues. A litigator would be good, So those are all things we need to take a look at. The other side of it is, of course, there's a lot of litigation going on and settlements outside of that, and so you really want somebody that's familiar with that process and seeing if that's the right direction we need to take, or if that's something we can handle in the house. So that's something that I would. It depends on what that particular individual would bring to the table, because with a good attorney, you can really cut costs down.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so that'd be first and foremost is someone that's familiar with municipal government, is familiar with litigation, and making that discretionary decision whether to handle it in-house or not. And then the other side of it is with the attorneys that we currently have. I know some of them, and they're good individuals, and so. But the intent is, you don't want to be penny smart, pound foolish, and sometimes you let an attorney walk away, and you'd save money if you would have retained them. And so that's what we'd have to take a look at is what's the equitable salary for particular individuals, and you could save money and prevent litigation, and so that's what we need. That's what whoever I would select as corporation counsel would have to analyze, and if there's a better practice for handling internal attorneys as far as that goes.
What's your level of concern, if at all, in terms of the litigation history with the city? I mean, there's just been a lawsuit that was a jury awarded $1 million in that drowning case. You had the infamous Shredgate $100,000 settlement. Could the city be doing better, and if so, how? If the city could do better, how do you do that?
Well, follow standard procedures.
Okay.
So with the shredding, that's what it just still baffles my mind is how that would happen, because when I came from banking, and you retained records for 7 years, and so
and the law is clear. In point of fact.
I mean, as far as with banking records, that's what you did.
Yeah.
But on treasurer's office records, what they do is, and what each department would do under my administration, would be send the information to the Secretary of State. They have a records division, and then they let you know when you should dispose of those records.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. I mean, we have boxes right now that has dates on them. Here's when they can be destroyed, and then you send them off to archives.
You get your permission slip. It's a pretty standard.
And then that's what's we would follow that same procedure citywide, and that's what we've always done at the treasurer's office.
Okay.
And then that way, if you follow that, that's what boggles my mind. The shred thing should never happen.
Okay, right. The drowning case. I mean, is that just an outlier case?
Unfortunately, that was I just it was a sad situation.
Sure.
And I just it was just I don't know how to characterize it, without stepping on people's toes because of the situation. But unfortunately, you need people paying attention, especially when you're dealing with water. I mean, let's put it this way: everybody it's a bad situation, tragic ending, and everybody was at fault.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess my question was more: should they have given more serious consideration to settling that case rather than taking it to trial and taking $1 million verdict?
Yeah, that's I didn't. I would leave that up to the chief litigator.
Okay.
I mean, I'd leave it up to corporation
The
counsel.
litigator in
Because,
chief.
you know what, no, I'm not doing that, just corporation counsel. But, sometimes I give my legal opinion, but it's not worth anything because I don't have a legal license.
Okay.
But that's where I would recommend or rely on the corporation counsel. And it goes back to the importance of hiring the right person because they have to have the understanding of litigation and what the ramifications are, the pros and cons. And that's very important because it saves you thousands of dollars or tens of thousands or even millions. It just depends.
Sure.
And let's put it, that's all levels of government. The county had theirs,
Oh yeah.
their own happening. And, there's times where you have to take the advice of the attorney. I mean, if you don't, then you're stepping out there on your own and really, I don't have the expertise or to make that determination. You'd want your attorney. That's what they're hired for because they know the legalities and what the ramifications are.
Okay.
And so you have to put somebody in there, just like the police, someone that's that you have your trust in that can make those wise decisions for what's best for Springfield.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the philosophy on any decision I make as mayor. I'm going to gather as much information as possible. And I'm not going to worry about re-election or moving up the elected ladder. I'm going to worry about what's best for Springfield. And I want all my directors to do the same thing.
Okay. A lot of split votes in the city council the last 4 years, and council relations are always, I think, inherently going to be a concern of any whoever's in office. I believe you've talked something about having some sort of a council coordinate. I'm trying to think of the nomenclature here, but some sort of a way to address both the aldermanic sort of form of government.
Right.
Yeah, can you Mark? How do you?
Well, see, I've been following city government since 1979.
Okay.
I've watched and learned. But what's interesting, the commission form is you had streets commissioner who's in charge of streets, so he wanted to make sure, or she wanted to make sure it's they get everybody's support. So they viewed the city as a whole, and that was with the same with CWP and the other areas. But when you go to the aldermanic form, now you have 10 individuals that are worried about their area, rightfully so. But the disconnect has been citywide, the impact citywide, where the mayor worries about that, of course, and the alderman to some degree. But what I would do is have I called it the strategic ward plan.
Thank you.
So I would, strategic ward plan, and then also to the city, so it'd be a strategic ward plan to the city. And what that would be is each ward, we'd work with each ward and the neighbors, the neighborhoods, I should say, businesses or other organizations, and the aldermen to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the area. And so what that would do is, what do they need to help improve the ward and make it the best they want it to be. And then the other side of it is, like with streets, prioritizing projects. So it would be identifying issues that need to be addressed, and then also what direction do we want to go to make it better for livelihood, and then how do we prioritize projects that are coming in that area. So those would be the three main items that we would do. And then so we have that strategic plan for each ward, but also we'd have a retreat on at least an annual, if not semi-annual basis with the city council members. And then, so of course that has to be open to the public.
Correct.
And so that would be the same format, is the direction, and of course the mayor, as mayor, I would provide direction of where I would like to go on different items, but then they could see how their wards would impact the overall city goals as far as moving the city forward.
When we talk about retreat, are we talking about Saputos or Hawaii or?
I was thinking city council members or city council chambers.
Okay.
I grew up in a family with 1.5 baths, so I'm not big frills as far as that goes. But I think that'd be the area, or we could have it elsewhere, But I think, well, you're probably right. It'd probably be best off-site. But because what you want to do is get the creative juices flowing. But the bottom line is, what you want is the ward plans feeding into the overall city plans. And that's how I think you move the city forward collectively. And because I think the aldermen have to understand, their ward's important, but the city's growth is as important. I mean, so you have to take it all into account.
I believe you were the first candidate to call for eliminating Capital Township, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. How lots of folks have said we should been saying let's eliminate townships. That's not a new idea per se statewide. How do you make that really happen so that it's not just an idea?
Well, I took it to the Efficiency Commission originally.
Uh-huh.
There's two concepts I took there. One was the Capital Township, and I was invited to go, as they did other elected officials.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it came about, I used to play softball for Springfield Recreation Department. And they always ask what township you're in. I thought, that's weird.
Yeah.
And you always put capital because that's the city boundaries.
Okay.
And so they knew if you were outside, Woodside or something, you had to pay extra. And so that's how I figured that out. I go, wow, So when people talk about consolidating, the taxpayer really only saves money is if you eliminate a taxing body.
Correct.
And so that's why I thought, well, Capital Township, when I presented, I said, I'm not talking about all townships. I'm just talking about Capital Township because it mirrors the city's boundaries.
Right.
And so that's why I presented. And I told them, I said, you should at least do an analysis of it. Do the be proactive and run the numbers and see what the city offers, see what the county offers, because I wasn't advocating bringing it into the city. People can get territorial if you didn't know that. As far as that goes.
Here,
right. So that's what you look at is. The services, you don't want the customer, that's why I call them customers, but you don't want the resident that's receiving the benefits to be harmed in any manner. You want to provide the same level of service or improve the level of service that they get. And so that's the ultimate goal is how can we, goes back to service, we're here to serve the public. How best can we do that? Can we save money along the way by consolidating Capital Township? But I was like a firestorm. I mean, people took offense to it. I didn't say, I said we should look at it, run the numbers and see if there's a better way to do it. And that's what I, proposed. And I will continue to do that until they actually do the analysis to see if it's worthy of eliminating.
By necessity, doesn't that then involve forging some alliances on the state level? Because I don't know that the city of Springfield by itself can eliminate that Capital Township. Don't you need some help from the state?
Right. I imagine so. It might have, but I believe the county. There used to be I thought it was Salisbury Township that was eliminated, but I'm not sure if it happened on the county because it was within the county. So it'd be either within the county's district or the state legislature as far as that goes. But I know I thought that was Salisbury that they had eliminated at one time, and I'd have to take a look at how they did it as far as that goes. Well, with the Efficiency Commission, I thought it made common sense.
Yeah.
You're looking at redundancy, and Capital Township is the epitome of redundancy in my mind. But if not, they need to prove me wrong, or that's what has to happen. Otherwise, it mirrors the boundaries. So unless they prove differently, how they can do it more efficiently than folding it into what the county offers and what the city offers, then I'll firmly believe it until they prove otherwise.
Speaking of efficiencies and common sense, we'll talk about police services for a second. I mean, as you are aware, the sheriff's office serves kind of nooks and crannies here and there around the city of Springfield. Is there a better way to address that? Should the city perhaps be providing services where the county is now? I mean, is that something that's worth looking at? Can you realistically look at that?
Well, I think for me there was a red flag when they brought it up because they were talking about budget constraints within county and how they didn't have a lot of coverage out in the rural areas.
Correct.
So when they recommended it, that's when they were going through that financial hardship. So to me, I thought they were wanted to merge so they could take city resources and employ them outside of the the perimeters that they weren't covering. So I'd be against that. But I think what needs to happen, it goes back to community policing. What you don't want is a lot of overlap. What you want to do is serve the public as efficiently as possible. So you shouldn't have, you should be able to work in conjunction with each other, but not have a lot of overlap. And so that's the direction I would take as far as mayor is to make sure that we have proper coverage within areas, and and that could go both ways. If we have officers within the area, especially with our community policing program, or I should say philosophy, we have to be able to help out. I mean, that's what the bottom line is about: serving the public, protecting the public.
Yeah.
And so if it, and that's what they do with the fire department right now. They have that reciprocal agreements, and so it'd be something similar, and they do that now with the police and sheriff's department and park district police, same thing. But that's something that it's always, I think, never say never.
Okay. You got an open-mindedness. Okay. Let me ask you about something going back to, I think it was 2013. This has to do with the pay spike, and there was a lawsuit that had been filed by the state against the pension board. You sit on the pension board, one is a voting member, one is a non-voting member. You took some criticism, I think, from some quarters when the contract negotiations were going on.
Oh, right,
you did raise your hand and say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't really a negotiating issue because our hands are tied by this lawsuit. Why didn't you bring this up earlier during the contract negotiations?
Well, as far as the contract negotiations, those are between the alderman and the mayor, and they did it in closed session, executive session.
Okay.
And so really the police, as far as that goes, I think that's the one you're referring to.
Correct.
That was, I believe, over a year going on.
Okay.
And so when I'm not a member of the police pension board, I just attend.
You're a non-voting.
Right. I'm not even a member.
Okay.
I just attend because, just like any alderman could attend, I just attended. So no alderman took interest to attend these meetings, but I took it upon myself to attend the meetings. And so at one meeting, they brought up the Department of Insurance audit. And so I explained to him, I said, well, when it happened with the fire department, what we did is we presented our case as far as here's why we calculate it the way we do. And then they came back, they would either, well, at that point, they didn't come back with any response. They, on the audit findings, they said, well, here's how you should be calculating. And then say, if you disagree, send us your response. And then if they didn't agree, then they'd set up a hearing. Well, we sent in our response, and nothing transpired. They never
It was
set a
fallow
hearing.
for some period of time, as I recall.
What's that?
It was kind of just laid there for a while.
Well, that's according to the Department of Insurance.
Okay.
But that's how it's always been. When I was in banking, we go through CRA. We go through audits, and that's how it worked. You would get the information from the auditor, you send the information, then they come back with a report. And that was a similar practice. And so with the police department, or with the police pension fund, that's why I said, if you don't agree with their calculation, you need to send it to them. And, tell them why you're calculating the way you do. And then so they said, well, we're supposed to have a hearing, and that's when I took the information to the mayor, right, within that week. And so...
so the mayor's office, you're saying, was on notice long before?
Oh, yeah. Well, he said, well, and quote, it was Mark Cullen, the mayor, and myself, and he pretty much said, he said, well, the spike issue is going by the wayside. And so I said, okay. And so, and then lo and behold, that week or shortly after that, I think that was in October. I'd have to look.
September-ish, I think, of 2013.
But this, when I had the report, that was like October or something, I think. So anyway, but I can check that if you want. And but anyway, that's when they negotiated out the longevity, and that's what we're talking about is the longevity calculation within the contract. So what you're talking about is something that was in the contract, and now they're trying to negotiate it out. Well, that's the under the purview of the mayor, and they've been working on it for a year, and so
it was going to go away anyway. I mean,
well, that's the alderman that disputed. I said, well, all you had to do is calculate it. I mean, if it saved the city money, then you made the right choice. But if you calculated and it didn't save the city money, you didn't make a good choice. I mean, that's what it came down to. And even to this day, that case has not been settled. It's in the courts.
Oh, I'll go check it.
So,
because if it's not the...
Because I asked about it, I said, what was Department of Insurance? Whatever happened to the case? And they said, well, it's still in litigation, or it's still,
like 3, 4,
it's never
5
been
years.
settled.
Yeah.
Never been settled. And that's what you're talking about. People use the term spike, longevity. The bottom line is it's a calculation, and the city provided the final numbers through the Office of Budget Management. They provided the ending salary of those officers. So it's a calculation. So if they feel that that the city provided the numbers, the pension board calculated it out. So the discrepancy is with the pension board and the Department of Insurance. It hasn't been settled yet. So it's still in litigation. So nobody knows. I mean, it's still it's an argument. Like you can run a math equation one way and I run it the other way. And that's what they're talking about is the the calculation of those retirees. Now, here's the bottom line, though, on that, because when it was discussed on talk radio and that, and I'm one to, as mayor, what I would do is bring it to the city council chambers. I wouldn't go on media circuit and discuss things. I think you have to, it's public information, let's discuss it in city council chambers. And so with regards to that, you know, you had individuals that based the rest of their lives on the retirement numbers that were given to them. So regardless how it turns out, if you're not going to fulfill what you had told those individuals, you're going to have to offer their jobs back, in my opinion.
All right.
Yeah, because, you know, they went off on false pretenses. You know, it's like you're ready to retire, and I said, oh, you know, here's, you know, okay, here's what you're going to get with your retirement, and here's what you can expect each month.
Yeah.
And then, so we let you retire, and you come back and say, oh, no, it's going to be like $200 or whatever it is, $100, whatever it is, less a month. You went off on false pretenses. So you should get your job back. And that's just how, you know, that's how I view things. I come from the private sector where, you know, with retirements, things of that nature, they change, you know, based on, and that goes back to what I said about flexibility. You have to be able to adjust things, you know. So when I was in banking, I had like 2 or 3 different retirement plans because it wasn't cost effective for the company. And but you know, whatever, I'm a firm believer in whatever's earned is earned, you know, as far as that goes. So that's the main thing. But the other thing with regards to pensions, you know, you ask all the candidates, any of them have any solutions? They're short on solutions. Well, here's how the pension funding works. The state legislature, they pass everything regarding to the pension funds. You know, what you can invest in, what the beneficiaries get, that's all an unfunded mandate, you know, as far as that goes. City council, which is the alderman and the mayor, they decide the funding to the funds, to the pension funds. So the pension boards, those are the ones that they do the calculations on based on the information provided by the city. They apply the state statutes to run the calculations, and that's how it's operated. So as far as the treasurer's role, you know, I serve, the mayor had appointed me to the fire pension. The treasurer's role is basically just with regards to the investments. You know, I don't, with moving the funds. That's all I do is move the funds. The board, they determine what investments to make. And how we do it, we have a consultant, Marquette Associates. Same with the police. They have a Marquette Associates as our consultant. And then they run the performers on, you know, the different asset classes and how the fund should be invested in the different asset classes. And so the board basically, you know, makes that determination. We're going to have X percent over here, or, you know, based on the recommendations given by the consultant, and then that's how it's given. But it's a directive by the boards as far as that goes. But it gets muddled and all that. But what I would do as a solution is have a pension fund summit, and that's where you bring all the representatives that impact the funds. So you'd have these legislative individuals, you know, you'd have your senator, local senators, the representatives, you'd have the police and fire unions, you'd have the trustees of the boards, and then you'd have, of course, the city council there, municipal league, they lobby, any lobbying interest should be there, and then we all work together to find a solution. Because right now, you know, everybody's going a different direction, and what we want to do is go the same direction.
What's the basis for believing that would solve anything, given that was tried kind of on the state level? We'll have these pension summits and organized labor, the unions, I mean, they've got this constitutional guarantee. It's like, well, you know, we have this trump card here.
Well, that's the other reason for residency.
Okay.
Because push comes to shove, if the city can't fulfill their retirement obligation, it's tied to property taxes.
Okay.
And that's how it used to be, unless they changed it.
Okay.
And then now, I would have to check, excuse me, but I think they may have changed the statute just this last year or so, where now they're making it where it's possible to withhold, I think it was income tax or sales tax, one or the other.
Okay,
and so it wasn't
if you're
just
not
property,
within a certain funding level,
right,
it just
right.
kicks in. Right.
But the good news is that the city has always paid their actuary amount. What I would do different as mayor, right now you have to be 90% funded, I think, by the year 2040. I would commit to 100% funding or each year. Instead of doing the 90% level, that's what's done now. So when they do the actuary analysis, they'll get a number that's 90% to reach that 90% level. And what I would want is the actuary to run the 100%.
Okay.
And then I think it'd be probably $1 million or maybe $2 million more each year, but it's time value of money.
Okay.
So what you would do is commit to that 100% level, because that's how it used to be. You know, when the actuary ran a number,
Yeah.
it was always at 100%,
Okay.
and now it's 90% because that's what the requirement at the state is.
Okay.
And so what we should do as a council is commit to that, trying to make ends meet at that 100% level, and just do it gradually.
Okay.
And that's what I would do as mayor, is commit to doing it. They call it GASB, you know, the GASB formula for government accounting standards.
Okay.
And that's what I would do, is the city has the option of putting in 90% or 100%. I'd put in 100%.
Are you
Is
saying
what
Joe
my goal
McMenamin-
is.
Are you saying Joe McMenamin has a point when he makes a big deal about the pensions?
Well, it's something you have to be aware of. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want to ignore it.
Sure.
I mean, look at the state.
Okay.
And then who gets hit on at the end, or they're talking about cutting retirees. And one thing I will not do is cut benefits.
Okay.
I mean, that's why you try to be proactive on the front end, and that's what I would do as mayor.
Okay. Great. What's the biggest difference?
Can you really read that?
Yeah, actually, I can. As long as I do it quickly afterwards.
Wow,
it just
that's pretty good.
What's the biggest difference between yourself and your opponent?
Two things. One is private sector experience. I have a broader spectrum of private sector experience, and of course, being involved with city government, it's different from county. I also served on the county board for 4 years. You know, my public sector experience, I've been in everything from front level, you know, doing the grassroots efforts, all the way to being president of Dane Thomas House Board and leadership Springfield Center for Independent Living, different organizations.
Okay.
So that's one aspect. The other aspect, it's just my passion to serve. I'm not, like I said, you know, I didn't, my passion is to do what's best for Springfield, you know, because, you know, my family's here, we've been here for decades, like everybody else. I mean, people have been here for a long time, but my driving factor, just like when my CRA days were for the bank, you know, they sent me in to low and moderate income areas to build a level of trust. That's how I view myself as mayor, is to make our community the model city for everybody. And so that's going to be my focus, because what really boggles my mind is, you know, we were talking about diversity back when my dad was mayor, and now you're talking years later, and we're talking about the same thing. It's crazy. We're the home of Abraham Lincoln.
Sure.
We should be the model for race relations in this nation. You know, we're the home of Abraham Lincoln. NAACP started here.
Yeah.
I mean, to be still talking about it like it's not moved the needle, it's just absurd. I mean, and that's just one aspect. The other aspect is economic development.
Okay.
We could do a lot better job in economic development. My plans are more detailed as far as that goes. You know, everybody can say they have a plan. Everybody wants the economy to grow. You know, everybody wants CWLP to be the crown jewel. But I had laid out specific plans to get it done.
Okay.
And as far as economic development, I looked at a variety of areas: Missouri, Utah, different municipalities, the Carolinas. The one that caught my eye was
Asheville.
Yeah. And so everybody, you know, they talk about target employment sector. Well, target industry sector is what they call it. I call it employment sectors. But that's a proactive approach for identifying how business sectors can grow and attract new businesses to the area based on their suppliers or what other industries that feed into them. But we also would have to identify what's preventing their growth. I mean, we should be doing that. Is the government hampering it? What's hampering your growth? And so that's what we should be doing on a proactive basis with regards to economic development. Another key component, of course, is the education factor. You know, I went to Lincoln Land Sangamon State, which is now UIS, but we have a great education community, and you know, 186, we need to work within that, make them strive better, where we can have people that are educated to take these living, what we want to have is jobs that provide living wages. You know, not just, you know, people having to work part-time to make ends meet. We need to attract businesses that provide living wage jobs. But then you have to have the workforce ready to do that. So my plan was to work not only with the education system, but also the trades. And the other key component of my overall plan was to partner with the school district 186 because I had done that when I was in banking. We did a adopt a school with Langfelder High School. I went southeast. I went to public schools and taught about banking. But the other aspect we taught about was what jobs were available in banking. And that's what we do on the city level, is partner with 186 and have individuals go in and teach the students the different career opportunities within city government. And then hopefully you pique their interest, and this goes back to diversity. You should have, you have a broad base of individuals there, actually a higher propensity of minorities in the school district 186. But what you would do is hopefully pique their interest, and so if they're interested in working out the power plant, they would know right then is what they need to be working on, what skills or educational requirements would be needed to move in that direction. Because not everybody wants to go post-secondary. Some will, and they jobs over there at CWLP or other areas that take that, but there are always frontline jobs as well, and that learn a trade, and that's where the unions would come into play as far as that piece of the puzzle. But you'd have different target industries to that's what we build upon. And the other part that I'd point out is the planning. That's really an area of disagreement. We have plans in place. What we need to be is more proactive in having a cohesive strategy for zoning or moving the city forward.
Okay.
And mine was, what's interesting with city government is, you have a lot of commissions and committees and all that. There's not one for economic development. And so I would develop, you have the Chamber of Commerce, but they only represent their members. What I would do is have a commission. I called it the Community Development Finance Commission. But that's what you would do is they would work with economic development, and one of the things they would do specifically is help prioritize TIP projects and prioritize those projects. So you'd have a diverse group. You'd include your developers, bankers, people that have vested interests, realtors, probably someone from the school district because they have an impact, or they're impacted by TIFs. But the other side of it is, I use two zoning examples. One is Magro Meats. Remember when Magro Meats came in?
Yeah. Was it going to be a processing plant? Yeah.
And so Stevenson Drive, which is a good location, they wanted to move there, but not everybody was happy, and they had to get rezoned. So here's how I view it, how we should be doing it. That's typical of any government. You can go and city government, so they should roll out the red carpet. They want the jobs coming in.
Sure.
And so they bend over backwards, which is good. But wouldn't it be nice if, under my plan, the direction I want to take is, they want to move there. You say, well, this is good, but here's how we can help you, and here's the obstacles you have to go before zoning, and point those things out. And then you say, but here's some other options. You can go over here or over on this area, and then here's how we can help you. And you don't have to get zoning or whatever the case may be. So you're trying to steer the development so it matches your community better.
And you talked about something similar to that on MacArthur with
Right, Roberts Automotive.
Right.
And so I had mentioned that to some individuals before it happened. I said, where you should try to develop it is on the corner of South Grand and MacArthur, because there used to be a gas station. And you have EPA issues. It's going to be an expensive piece of property to develop. And so the easiest piece of property, I used to work at the Esquire. The easiest piece was right there where the Esquire was, because you have a vacant lot. And so I said, what they should do is help Roberts move to the corner. And I said, couldn't you visualize Roberts Automotive? Everybody now sees how beautiful it is. They go, wow. If that was on the corner, it'd be phenomenal, because then you would add a domino effect through going on down to MacArthur. But this goes back to, this is how everything works together. It goes back to my ward initiative, the strategic ward plan, because when MacArthur Roberts Automotive came, you had the neighbors that didn't want it.
Correct.
And so if you had that plan in place, prioritization, working with the neighbors, the businesses in the area, and the aldermen to come up with a strategic plan, working together, there's that level of trust already built up, then they could have seen the larger picture. And that's what it's all about, is seeing the forest through the trees. And that's what I would bring to the table, is that vision as far as having a comprehensive, cohesive strategy with economic development. And what you're hoping to do is develop the inner core, our heart of our city. Because you can pretty much cut a circle or a rectangle around the city, and that area is growing. But to help 186, help tax dollars, you're talking about police issues and how you can best generate revenue, is developing the heart of our city, because that's the areas that need it most, and that has the greatest propensity for property tax increases or generating additional property taxes is what I should say.
What about money for 186? I mean, the current mayor has put forth, he said, well, you know, he sees a day when the city, or at least if he had still maintained the office, where he would perhaps push for a property tax increase to benefit 186. What do you think about that? Is that something that you might be in favor of?
Well, first and foremost, I'd be in favor of development first.
Okay.
I think that's what we need to do is concentrate our efforts on development. Because the bottom line is, everybody, my property tax has gone up. I don't know about you, I'm sure yours have.
Well,
And that's
why I
because,
appealed it.
right. But the two things, the county, they have a equalize, I can't remember the variable they use, but they've changed that from time to time. And that changes the formula, it increases. And so the other side of it is your property values go up. Usually they're going up. So the property tax dollars go up each year because of those factors.
It's not like Illinois has low property taxes.
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
Yeah.
I think what we need, as mayor, I'm going to concentrate on development and increasing revenues through development.
Visitor and Convention Bureau. We've got the Visitor Convention Bureau. We've got the Chamber of Commerce. We've got Prairie Capital Convention Center. We've got Downtown Springfield Incorporated. All of which have a hand here in promoting tourism. Plus, you've got a city and alderman now who's who's going to take over the state tourism office. Does the city need the amount of money that's spending now on the Visitor Convention Bureau, given all these other organizations that are doing at least somewhat similar work?
And that goes back to the employment sectors. One thing we would do is have all those groups working together.
Okay.
So it goes back to your police question.
Okay.
You have overlap. You don't want overlap. What you want to do is be working in unison. So you want to be maximizing those dollars at work because tourism is a big industry for Springfield. And so what we want to do is maximize those dollars as much as possible and being as proactive. The other aspect of my development plan was to have certified business advocates because our best sellers are individual business people or travelers that go out.
Yeah,
And
I'm
so-
glad you expressed that because I've heard that. Now, who certifies these folks? I mean, they sound like salespeople to some extent.
Well, that's what they would be. And the reason I say they're certified, it needs to be developed.
Okay.
I mean, it's my concept as far as that goes.
So
But
let
actually,
anybody do
actually, I'm not going to take the idea. I'm not big on who gets the credit.
Okay.
I worry about who getting the job done.
Okay.
Okay. And actually, the Chamber of Commerce had done a. I'll have to look at the term. I mean, I'm talking like the early '90s is when this was about, and it was they called it a development council or something. But what they had a group of business people that they were trying to educate on how to market Springfield, but you know it never went anywhere. And so what you want to do, that's why I said you should have it certified. So each individual would take a look at, they would know how to sell Springfield. So you have accountants that go to conferences. You have elected officials go to conferences. All these individuals go to conferences. A lot of people are traveling, so they're there with their peers, or they're at a conference. They should be comfortable in talking to the conference person, whoever's putting it on, or their individual peers, and say, "Hey, have you ever thought about?" They could be in casual conversation and be talking about, "Oh, we're going to build we're going to expand our business." Well, have you ever thought about coming to Springfield, Illinois? You know, we have great interstate access to Springfield. We have rail available,
Boy,
and
we
they
sure
could.
do, don't we?
So we'll see how that goes. And so that's what you'd point out, but you want them certified so they understand how to promote Springfield, and that goes back to being the model city. But that's one aspect. The other aspect of that was to have certified finance individual. I can give you I looked it up. There's a entity that certifies financial developers. And so what they do, it's just not private sector, but public sector. So they educate you on bonding, bank financing, everything. So you have these certified individuals with economic development, as well as private sector, because you have lenders. And then if you it wouldn't matter if you go to the bank or the city or where you're trying to get your financing, they would be well-rounded where they would know the various finance programs available to individual developers or projects. And that's what you're trying to do instead of, you want to have individuals who can be like a one-stop person to talk about financing on a high level. And so you would have those individuals certified. The other aspect that I had brought up was with regards to a clearinghouse for business information, like you would for housing information. And now you can go to a bank and you can get all the housing information you want. But as far as with businesses, and that's the disconnect, and that's where the certification comes in, is you'd have bankers that would be adept at city programs as well as their own programs.
Okay. So if I understand this correctly, not to pick on a company, but say LRS, somebody from LRS goes out to some conference, they've been through this training session or whatever, where they can tell their folks, hey, this is the average property taxes, or whatever.
Well, I don't know if you want to drill down that much, but sell us on our, well, you could on property tax, because that is a selling point.
Sure.
You'd want the positives.
Right, I understand why the positives.
Right.
But here's the average cost of living or what have you, so these folks have a common training ground so that they can promote the city.
Or what you don't want to give them too much. What you want to do is make it easy enough where they could appeal to others to at least get more information.
Okay. Great.
And that's what it'd be, because we can always give them more information.
Okay.
But what we want to do is open that door.
Okay.
So invite them, be more inviting, be more proactive, have a more proactive approach on the private public sector side, both together.
Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about politics, which I'm sure is your favorite subject.
Sure. Yeah.
You finished first in the primary. Does that make you the front runner? How do you feel about where you're at right now? I mean, are you the front runner? Are you even? Are you behind? Do you know? Do you care?
Well, we always run like we're behind as far as that goes. I say we because I always viewed it as friends and family. That's how we always had done it. What I gauge it on, I don't run polls, and we don't never run polls, but I gauge it on interaction with others, because you can tell if someone is not going to be for you. They pretty much, you can tell. They just won't talk to you as much, or they're not as free. But no, we like where we're at, because we didn't have as strong as get out the vote effort as structured parties would, and with the low turnout that individuals from the other side or individuals have told me that. They were expecting to win. They were surprised we won.
Palazzolo you're speaking of here, is that correct?
Just I wasn't sure how they thought it would end up between the mayor, Palazzolo, and myself. But with the low turnout, usually that benefits a party-backed candidate.
Okay.
And
You're saying you don't have the backing of the Democratic Party?
No, we do, but it's not as strong. I mean, have you seen the strength of one party or the other?
Yeah, it's been noticeable.
Right. So, but what's nice is, the politics for us is public service, and you can. We have a broad base. We have a broad-based pool of support, and so I draw across all lines. Republican, Democrat, Independent, Labor, all lines. And that's because because of my background in the private sector. I've had a lot of ties for a long time. I tell people, don't judge us on the year of campaigning, judge us on what we've done over the last 20 years. Okay. I mean, so that's, I think, coming to fruition is, the commitment to the community. Okay. And I think people are energized, motivated, the passion that I would bring to the office of mayor, and the direction I would take to do what's really best for the city. And that's, like I said, I can't say that enough, is, when a decision is made, I'm going to look at what's best for Springfield. Okay. And that's how I'm going to make my decisions.
How's the money working for you? I took a look, and it's kind of hard to tell because you're
doing fundraising on an ongoing basis. Right.
There's a lot of fundraising coming. But the latest figures indicate you're behind, not by a huge amount here, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean,
I haven't looked at it.
I think you don't know how much money you've got?
No, I thought you said I'm hugely behind.
No. I said you're not huge. I said it struck me that you're behind, but not a huge gap.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right. I thought I was hugely behind.
No. I'm sorry if I gave you that impression.
No.
Are you comfortable with fundraising? How much do you think this race is going to cost in the end?
In the end, I thought probably about $200,000.
Okay. And you're a little more than halfway there. Okay.
And in the first half, I think that's where it came about. I think I was like, I spent 20, I know, and I had, I think, 70 at that one report. So
yeah, okay.
What was interesting in that though is the others only spent like 1,000. The mayor and Paul spent 1,000, I think, each or something before the last report. Okay. Yeah, look at because they had higher balances.
Yeah.
And then, but they didn't spend as much. I was kind of surprised by that. I spent like $20-some thousand.
Yeah, you spent a lot more. They were keeping their powder dry. So, I mean,
or it goes back to that accrued accounting that I was talking about.
Okay.
You have these bills sitting over and they haven't paid them yet. We were paying. I was paying him, trying to pay him.
I forgot to ask about leadership at CWLP. Eric Hogg has been running the show. Is that something you continue? Would you bring in a general manager? Has it been the pattern of the past? Would you do something different?
I wasn't for an entrepreneurial general manager. I spoke about that at different forums because someone had suggested an entrepreneurial general manager. The last time the city had done that, they lost over $50 million, and that was a power marketing scandal that I think it was in 1998 or 99. And so I've always promoted we need to go back to our basic mission, which is providing affordable electricity and water to the citizens of Springfield. And I think we've gotten away from that. Okay. And first and foremost, we should be taking care of the ratepayers of Springfield. Okay. And that's what I intend to do is work to make us more affordable again, because we used to be the lowest rate around, now we're among the highest. Yeah. There's changing regulations and that, but really there's some missteps along the way that I think if we're more proactive, more visionary, that we could have prevented some of the things that have happened. And so that's...
I am hearing you say you want to bring a manager then, is that...
No, as far as, no, it'd be the same approach. I meet with Eric one-on-one and make a decision as the direction I want to take. But I did, I don't know if you saw my plan for CWLP.
Perhaps I missed it.
Okay, yeah, but you can go on my webpage if you want to drill down on it, Langfelder2015.com. But I'd bring back the CWLP Utilities Committee for City Council.
Yes,
for, it was trust and accountability, and so we'd bring that, make accrued reports available to the public and to the City Council, more information to them. And then on the restructuring the debt, taking a look at the wind contracts, but all contracts related to CWLP, and making sure that they are fulfilling them as needed. I brought up the state contract with regards to renewable energy. They're supposed to take on 50%, and that never came to fruition. And so I meet with the governor and see if we can work out an amicable solution with regards to that.
It seems to me you've been pushing renewable energy more so than your opponent. Is that just my perception, or?
Right. Well, I visited Springfield, Missouri, and what's interesting is they have their own solar farm, and it's an option to buy. And here's the difference between CWLP and Springfield, Missouri. Springfield, Missouri did their plants second. They came here and looked at what we've done, and they have a blended. It's not as much because the requirement in Missouri is different. We're selling like 20%, where they're doing 6%, I believe, and I think it's like 5% solar and the small part wind, small part hydro. And so, but what was interesting is solar mirrors the capacity of solar mirrors more the demand of electricity, because it's during the day when your peak demand is. And so that caught my eye. And the other thing is they had a private partnership with an entity that built the farm, and so they have the option to buy if they want to buy it, but it's not saddled on the backs of their ratepayers. And so it's an option to buy, and that's the way how they performed it. Now with us, with what we're going to spend in wind contracts, we could have built our own solar farm or wind farm if we wanted to.
Aren't your hands somewhat constrained though by the deal with the Sierra Club, or is that something you think you might be?
I think they, again, that's discussions in executive or wherever they discussed it at. I'm the treasurer. That would have been taking place with the city council and the mayor. And so with those discussions, they're behind closed doors because they're trying to work out an agreement. And but solar would have been the way to go. And if you, I think Sierra Club, I know they get bad rap, and what should have happened is, I'm not sure if that was proposed. And that could have been part of the arrangement. Well, what we'd like to do is start our own solar farm, or take a portion of our sales and put it towards that. I mean, because right now we don't have the funds. I mean, we're at the end of the day, after the 10 years, you're going to spend over $100 million, and it's gone with the wind. I mean, you know what I mean? But solar, I think it's that's the direction we need to take, because it does mirror our demand, and so that's what it goes back to the analysis. You have to do your homework and run the numbers, because I'm a banker. You want to run the numbers, and if it makes sense to, I don't know if you own it or if you have somebody else do it, but that's something that's in the equation, because by 2025, the city of Springfield is going to have 25% renewable energy per EPA regulations. So what we need to be doing is thinking ahead now, so when the wind contracts come up, or going back to my suggestion of auditing the contracts, now you can renegotiate those contracts, put language in where it fluctuates with the market price instead of having that set price, high price that you're paying a premium on. You should have language in the contract to protect the ratepayers, and that was not done. And so that's what I think. That's the direction I would take as mayor. That's one area. The other is, of course, we talked about the pilot, readjusting that, and back under Mayor Dallin, rightfully so, he did a blue ribbon panel with regards to the police and fire pension funds, because he saw that the forecasted unfunded liability of both funds, and the group came out with the increase or the change of the calculation for a pilot, and that was supposed to take care of the funding as well as any capital projects. And so unfortunately it doesn't, the projections or the performer didn't come to reality, and so at that point what should have been done is you don't take as much from the pilot. I mean, if you're not going to spend it on the pension funds, as was, they have some, but not like they intended. So you should have changed that calculation, or at least put it towards the police and fire like it was intended, and or just adjust the numbers. So that's one area I'd take a look at as well. But the other thing is with services, administrative services, we need to review the operations of CWLP as far as administration with what's being provided to the corporate fund and vice versa. One I mentioned was the Information Services Division, and that's you know, they do all the software technology, and you know, that's CWLP runs that. But what we need to do is make sure that I think there's duplication of services that we might be able to do more efficiently within that area, and that's just one example.
Should we close plants? I mean, the Sierra Club has suggested 32, 33.
Well, I think that's what you have to take a look at. Even Eric Hobby said at some point in time it's going to outlive its useful life, and that's what you have to be ready for. And so that's, you know, 2025, we need to be looking ahead and make that determination. Does it make sense? And that's what should have been done on the natural gas side. And you know, they've already made that commitment to convert it. I have, but as far as that
are we
goes,
kind of at a tipping point now, because these plants either need some investment or they, I mean,
well, it's been proved to, they've already made some of the modifications to change them to a natural burning. And so, I think they're at the point of no return. I'd have to check. That's something that I'd asked. I thought they already approved those projects. And that's what you'd have to take a look at, is run the numbers and what makes financial sense with regards to that. Because Dahlman 4, the main one, you have to have a backup, you know, as far as that goes.
Sure, they've got 4 as total.
Right. And so, so 34, you have that. 33 rather. So 4 is running, I think, at around 50% capacity right now. And so that's you know, that's what you have to run the calculations and see what's in the best interest.
Great. I'm out of questions, and I really
Are you really?
appreciate your time.
Well, it's been fun, hasn't it?
Actually, it has been kind of fun. Is there anything we didn't address you think is important for folks to know? I know that there obviously is. Is there anything that strikes you that seems particularly?
Well, no, I think we touched on quite a bit of it. And I think, well, working with the city council, I have a different approach too. I think going back to the differences is, you know, I've worked on, you know, even when I was on the county board, I worked, I was a minority. You know, there's 23 Repubs to 6 Democrats. You know, I was able to work within that structure. And I think,
caucus,
you know, I always had an open door, right? I had an open door policy. And what I get a kick out of is, you know, people are really talking about transparency now. Well, I did it when I first came into the office. I don't know if you heard the story about the annual treasurer's report.
No,
it's a requirement to file that each year. Well, when I asked for it, they said, well, it's you know, those computer forms, continuous form paper.
With the holes on either side.
They used to file it that way. I said, well, why do you do that? And they said, well, if anybody wants to find out about city finances, they can look through it. I said, well, that's not right. And so I changed the format of it so it's reader friendly. So now you can see where, you know, the city's spending their dollars, especially with employees, what they're getting paid, what revenues are coming to the city. We have it online, and I did it because it's the right thing to do. And that's how I approach government, like I did the private sector. You're there to do the job, to serve the public. It's the same thing, serving your customers, serving the public. And I did it. It wasn't because it's transparent. It's because it's the right thing to do. And that's how I would operate as mayor, is I would operate things because it's the best thing to do for the interest of the public.
I think the question often, though, becomes, I mean, you know, more and more I think we're seeing government put salaries online, pensions online, that, the comptroller I think is a good example, the contracts online, that sort of
Right.
stuff. I think oftentimes though where the rubber often meets the road is when you get a FOIA request from somebody who wants the disciplinary report on the public works employee or something like that.
Right.
How do you handle that? Because that's not something that you necessarily put online for the world to see. I mean,
Right. And see, I'm not any reporter or anybody comes to me as treasurer before even the FOIA was changed, even today. If they want information, if it's public information, I have it at my fingertips. I'll provide it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have them jump through the loops of filing a FOIA if I can prevent it. Now, if it's confidential information or you know, something with regards to identity that might be at jeopardy, then I'll run it through Corporation Counsel and make sure that, you know, we're handling things correctly. But if it's just general information, we provide it as expeditiously as possible.
What do you think of the FOIA website that the city puts up? What use does that serve, where everybody's name who asks for a FOIA request is up there, and sometimes they provide the answer and sometimes they don't? I mean,
well, they should provide. You have to be fair. I mean, you should, if you're going to do it all the time. You know, not piecemeal it.
Okay. What purpose does that serve, though? I mean,
yeah.
Would you continue doing it?
Well, that's something we take a look at, and that's one of my goals is to review the FOIA process.
Okay.
Of course, the FOIA representative for the city is the clerk.
Correct.
And so that's something that I would have that individual's perspective on as far as that goes. But my perspective as mayor is to, you know, they shouldn't have to file a FOIA unless it's necessary.
Okay.
You know, just provide the information. If it, you know, makes sense, provide it.
For example, let me give you for example, because there's oftentimes, give me a list of the building code violations for such and such address. Is that something somebody should have to have file a FOIA?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay.
Unless there's some confidentiality
Yeah.
of the individual. I know if you're buying a piece of property, you'll want to know if there's any liens on that property or
Sure,
something
absolutely.
of that nature.
Yeah.
And so that's something. Once you have the answer, though, if say you had to file the FOIA, and then say, but really didn't need to.
Yeah.
That should be the standard for the rest. Yeah. You know, so you had to do the jump through the loops, so nobody else had to. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
Because there wasn't any. Say I sent it over to Corporation Counsel, and they'd come back and say, well, you really didn't need to. There's really no jeopardy of identity or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
And then so you'd say, okay, you know, so you mark those. Okay, in these instances, it's okay to provide the information.
I mean, we're talking about a city where not that long ago, the administrations claimed that building permits were not subject to disclosure. I mean, that's.
No, really, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no.
That's
I'm aware. It's here. We're here to serve the public.
Okay.
And you know, I hear the stories that how everybody's bogged down. The county had to have an attorney just to handle FOIA requests. I mean, that's what he did all the time. That's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it goes back to my police, reports. Yeah. We need to make them more efficient so they can utilize their time more effectively. You know, for attorneys or police officers. You know, not saying FOIA is not important, but if we can give you the information like that, it's not gonna. There's no harm. Let's provide the information.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess maybe editorially speaking, I mean when you're saying that what I'm hearing you say is that if it's not controversial, if it's just a list of violations or citations for a given property, I'm hearing you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, there's nobody's name in there who's been disciplined or something.
Right.
That's the sort of thing that I'm hearing you say. It should be a less complicated perhaps process than it already is.
And that's something that goes back. You're always analyzing that process, and so.
Because right now you have to generate a letter so that accompanies it and all that sort of.
I mean, see, I read the book on how to handle news media.
Okay.
And so they said, they have a job to do.
Do you have that book? Can I see it?
I think my brother-in-law has it actually. But one thing is you have a job to do like everybody else.
Right.
So usually what I'll do is I'll say, well, when do you need the information by?
Right,
And they'll tell you. So, I'll try to, if I'm in the middle of something, that's why I ask that. But yeah, if we can provide the information, not only to media, but individual that wants it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we should have no special rights actually.
Right. Yeah, you handle them all the same is what it should be done.
Okay.
And so, that's concerning if there's information on the webpage that is sometimes it's complete and sometimes not, and it's similar.
I've seen
you need
differences.
to have it standardized where and I'm all for favoring more information if it's not hindering anybody.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again.
Well,
Mr.
thanks.
Langfelder.
Thanks, Bruce.
I actually had a couple of extra ones. If you
Oh, good.
mind.
Sure. If you go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Okay.
hit this and put this in. There was something you had mentioned earlier about the community policing. I was just curious about it, like the houses that you would get for them to use as like mini police stations. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how you would fund that. Would you be leasing houses? Would you be
Well, actually,
casting
Enos Park
volunteers?
already they offered one.
And nobody would take it.
Yeah, nobody took it. And so really what that's what B is partnering, because it's to their benefit, the neighborhood. You have real proactive neighborhoods.
Sure.
And they would welcome having an officer there. And so.
What does that say though when someone is given an offer, you can live someplace for
Yeah, you
free,
can't-
and they
yeah,
say, no
no.
thanks.
Yeah. But see, if you make it part of the initiative,
Yeah.
then I think that's the difference. You have to have that. Sometimes that's where being mayor is influential. I mean, you can provide that direction, because it is that important.
Could you give them a bonus, an incentive?
Yeah, I
Not
think
only
that's
do you
what.
play-
Well, the other side of it is, with union contracts. I mean, that comes into play too.
Yeah.
So what you want is consistency, and being mayor, this is probably a different philosophy from the others. I like to run for the office, not against individuals. That's why I'm hesitant to mention anybody. But it's not about me sitting here or in the seat of the mayor. What I want to do is make cultural changes within the system, so it doesn't matter who comes in afterwards. It continues, because it's too easy for someone to come in next and just untie everything you did. But what you want to do is put processes in place, make a cultural difference where it works, and then you get the buy-in from everybody.
Yeah.
And then if there is change, you have public outcry. Or, you have people saying, you don't want to be doing that. I mean, it's working. Let's move it forward. Because what happens, you get a new administration, everything goes back to square one.
Right.
And what we want to do is go to square exponential.
Sure. But I mean, aren't you kind of doing that yourself now? Or whoever wins this race? I mean, we take a look at all the departments. I mean, how do you build? Do you build on a culture, whatever culture might exist that's present now, or do you just start from scratch again? How do you see that working? If you're
I think it's improve. What it be for myself. I only could speak for myself.
Sure.
Is I think molding it is what it'd be a better. It's you would mold it to the direction you want to take. Because I always said, you should be the model city with regards to race relations, economic development, CWLP, and trust in government. Those are the standard bearers. But what you want to do is create that culture where employees, going back to the inspector general, employees, I don't think they feel comfortable in coming forward with any type of criticism or, because they don't want to be thrown under the bus. And so what you have to do is build a culture of trust, not only for the public, but also for the employees, so they feel confident in that we are going to resolve issues or provide solutions. Because if they feel that they come with something, they want to point out a problem, they want to make sure there's no repercussions.
Sure.
I don't care what job you're in.
But there are, in point of fact, there's already whistleblower statutes in place. I mean,
not at City Hall, not specifically.
The state, right. I believe, does.
Yeah,
cover
but really what you want is a culture where people feel confident in their leader that you're not going to get, you're not going to get singled out, or there's no repercussions for pointing out a deficiency, because what you want to do is, I have in my office, I'll use that as an example. Some people will point something out because, they'll say, oh, well, that guy messed up or she messed up. And I'm thinking, okay, how do we prevent that from happening again? The mistakes, you correct the mistake, but I want to know is how can we prevent that from happening again? You see what I'm saying? It's so that's the approach I would take. But I think the inspector general, that came about from a couple things. One is the shredding, it blew it up, but it was the level of trust between the alderman and the mayor. There was no open dialogue,
I think
and that's where
Treegate helped as well.
right. Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, I mean, there's several things that led to it.
Well,
but
what do you think? I mean, at the end of the day, is the inspector general a good idea? It's a lot of money, and we're the
For myself, it would. I said for myself as mayor, I don't think it would be.
No.
But that's the city council. They're the ones that voted on it, so they'll have to decide. And hopefully, with the board plans, the open dialogue that we'd have, and the direction I would give for the administration, the departments throughout the city, they would see that and feel the comfort level in moving us forward as a municipality and as a city.
Are you tough enough though? If you see somebody do a shred gate or a tree gate, our head's gonna roll sooner than they did.
I told someone had asked me to go to a news conference for Chief Williams, and I said, "Well, why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, he's going to try to get his retirement." He says, well, I said, okay. And he said, well, he shouldn't get it because he, did the shred. He gave the order. I said, well, you know what? If my deputy treasurer would have gave that shredding order without my knowledge, they would have been fired.
It wouldn't be a retirement.
That's a fireable offense.
Okay.
I mean, I would have just got rid of him. But Chief Williams was willing. I mean, he was kept on for a prolonged period of time.
Correct.
I mean, that's what you would do. You're right. You'd say, okay, you either send in your resignation or, that's it.
And you don't wait 2 or 3 months the way that
No,
okay.
and that's what happened.
Yeah.
So to me, it seemed like, I don't think Chief Williams. This is just my personal opinion.
Sure.
I don't think he acted alone as far as that goes. I think there's others that had influenced his decision.
Are we ever going to know?
I don't know.
Because the biggest
Well,
question
everybody
is, who knew what
That's
when?
right. That's going to be what goes down in Springfield lore. Yeah, it's going to be one of those things. And there's, that's the bottom line is you hope that the tree thing doesn't happen, and you sat in those, and you kind of scratch your head and go, really?
Well, they kept the chief witness sitting around for a day.
Right. That's not right.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what it comes down to is someone makes a mistake, you have to look at the severity of the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to make sure it does not happen again.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't want is things, brushed under the rug or, not being resolved, and they go, then that's where the trust level goes down.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm going to try to do is improve the trust level.
Okay.
And I think that's what I bring to the table is, I've always operated that way is, I don't mince words too much. I don't dance around the issues too much. But that's just my nature.
Trust is earned. I mean, it's
Right.
not.
Right.
It's hard to just say trust me and people just.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. Well, especially for elected officials anymore.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
Not to
because-
cast aspersions, but.
Right. That's how it is. So I mean, people have been with elected officials. That's why I always point out at a forum. Usually, I'll say, either one of us can say we're going to grow jobs, and that all sounds great.
And
do you have right? And what's your plan? I mean, specific plan.
Yeah.
But so if I drill down like I have, they say, well, you're not visionary. I'm thinking, okay, whatever. But that's but I want to cross the T's and dot the I's. I mean, that's what it's about. I see it here, and I want to build the road map.
Yeah.
How do we get here?
Okay.
So that's how I've always done it.
Eyes
I
glazed
point
and
out
what?
something, and then I like my CWOP because reporters call me. How are you going to do that? I said, well, I'm going to have I'll show you. So that's when I rolled out my plan. I mean, and I think if we're able to accomplish, looking at the contracts and operations, eliminate duplications, and then the pilot, and then refunding or taking a look at refinancing the bonds.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can make things happen.
Is a refinancing kind of a no-brainer, though? I mean, this is kind of
Yeah. I'm just surprised it didn't happen earlier. The way, it's been presented. So that's, but that's. I think you just have to look at those items. But that's how you have to. It's just not having an idea. It's really anybody can have that idea, but how do you get there?
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this?
Well, I don't want to go.
So on the community policing, but that's what you take a look at. What resources? But there are grant funds. The city gets community development block grant funds, and one piece of my economic development was the live work home ownership program.
Yeah, was that the downtown plan?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, SDAT, and that was a piece of it because we can reprioritize those funds or grant dollars, and we can do it. And that's one area you can provide down payment assistance for properties.
Yeah.
But like you said, well, they wouldn't even take the house. But
Yeah.
Downtown, what you'd want is artists or something of that nature.
Sure.
Individuals that would come downtown, and that's how you can incentivize them to live and work downtown, if at all possible. Because I think for downtown specifically, you want a home ownership capacity there, or some piece of it. It's just not renters. I know a lot of them are focusing on renters, but I think if you can have condominiums or townhouses, what you do is you recycle those dollars. So the developer gets their money back, and then they can go out and do another project.
Yeah,
And then you have vested people downtown.
How's that year-round farmers market going to work in January?
Well, that'll be interesting. won't
Yeah, it will be interesting.
Yeah, but I think it's something we need to take a look at. Other cities have, and that's what you'd have to figure out. Is there a place that you could do it? So maybe it's not downtown. Maybe it's some other area. It just
It
depends.
seems to be a big empty building somehow.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But you have to have the you have, that's evidently, I guess that's one I didn't lay out the step-by-step thing to do.
Yeah, I was listening, I said, well, that sounds like good in theory.
No, I
but it's-
actually, resurrecting downtowns, that's what some have done.
Yeah.
And they've looked at it. What they had, you're right, it was like an open market, it was an open area.
Yeah.
That was a large facility that they could have the farmer's market in.
Yeah.
So that's something that we'd have to take a look at. Might not be downtown, it could be elsewhere, but yeah.
Oh, maybe at the old Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, something like that. Bring them on in. Well, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you again.
Yep. Well, thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
And your name again?
My name's Alan. I mean,
Alan.
we didn't actually get
Okay.
introduced.
Okay.
I'm the public affairs reporting intern here
Oh, good.
this year.
Oh, that's fun. Where you
It's pretty
go to
fun.
school at?
UIS.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's my alma mater. I've been there so long ago that they used to have classes downtown. I took
Really?
a class downtown.
Now, was it you or was Palo Alto talking about starting classes downtown again?
Well, they already have Lincoln Land down there.
You see,
But
yeah.
Everybody said that. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I've said it, he said it,
Yeah.
and Mayor probably said. Well, I was on downtown Springfield board, so. Yeah, that's something, but two things. One, 11th Street coming down,
Mhm.
but you have to have it convenient. I mean, if I'm a student, I want things convenient as possible.
Sure.
And so I think that all plays into it.
You guys need to live someplace like Seattle or San Francisco or someplace, and talk
Really
about
have to drive.
Yeah, exactly.
Sit in traffic. Well, Springfield likes it convenient.
Yeah.